Imagine an ancient artifact covered in gold that embodies the direct connection between the divine and humanity. An object so powerful that it was both revered and feared at the same time, jealously guarded by an ancient people, carried into battle to defeat enemies, and hidden in secret sacred places. This is the Ark of the Covenant. But what is it really? What secrets did it hide within its golden walls? The tablets of the law, received by Moses directly from God, or something even more mysterious? According to some legends, the Ark possessed a devastating power, capable of incinerating anyone who dared to approach without permission. But are these just legends? And above all, where did it end up? Some believe that it is buried under the sands of the desert, others that it rests beneath the temples of Jerusalem, or that it is even kept in the heart of Africa. Its disappearance has given rise to countless theories, from historical ones to the most fantastic, fascinating archaeologists, scholars, and adventurers for centuries. So if the existence of the Ark of the Covenant is a mystery that is not easy to solve, some questions deserve to be investigated, because the answers could change our understanding of our past. For example, what was the true purpose of the Ark of the Covenant? What if it wasn't just a sacred or votive object, but something older and more mysterious? Before we begin this fascinating journey, as always, we invite you to subscribe to the channel to support our work and not miss our new videos.
Have them make an ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high. Cover it with pure gold, both inside and out, and make a gold molding around it.
These are the instructions that Yahweh gives to Moses for the creation of the artifact that, according to tradition, would contain the tablets of the law, that is, the stones on which the 10 Commandments were inscribed, received by Moses on Mount Sinai directly from God. These tablets represented the sacred covenant between Yahweh and the people of Israel, and made the ark not only a precious container, but also a symbol of the bond with the divine. But are we sure that the function of the Ark of the Covenant was just that? In reality, as we learn from ancient texts, the Ark was endowed with mysterious and in some ways uncontrollable powers, and it is precisely these extraordinary abilities and the detailed description of certain elements that invite us to reflect on its real purpose and use. But the first question that needs to be answered is, where did the Ark of the Covenant end up? And why did such a powerful and famous divine symbol disappear into thin air? As we learn from the words of Yahweh, reported in the book of Exodus, the Ark was not excessively large. It was just over 1 meter long, and the Hebrews carried it through the desert on their shoulders, using 2 golden wooden poles inserted into gold rings. Only the Levites, the priestly tribe, had the right and responsibility to handle this artifact, both because it was considered sacred, but above all, because it was considered extremely dangerous, even lethal, for anyone who touched it without the proper respect or preparation. During transport, the ark was carefully covered with a cloth made of takash skin, a mysterious creature mentioned in the Bible, whose true identity remains a mystery. When the people stopped during their wandering in the desert, the ark was placed inside the tabernacle, a sort of mobile sanctuary. Only Aaron and his sons were allowed to approach for the incense rituals, protected by a curtain that hid them from everyone's eyes. But this was not the only peculiarity. During stops, the ark had to be at least 1 kilometer away from the camp. This is clearly stated in the Bible.
When you see the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord your God carried by the Levitical priests, you will leave the place where you are and follow it. There will be a distance of about 2,000 cubits between you and the ark. Do not go near it, so that you may know the way you must go, since you have never passed this way before.
With the entry of the Israelites into the Promised Land, the power of the ark becomes even more tangible. Under the leadership of Joshua, the ark goes before the Israelite army, instilling fear in their enemies and contributing to their defeat. Its most famous feat, the fall of the walls of Jericho, which collapsed at the mere sound of the trumpets, while the ark advanced triumphantly. Without it, defeat was almost certain. The Hebrews, for example, suffered a terrible defeat against the Amalekites, precisely because they had not brought the ark with them. On one occasion, the ark was even captured by the Philistines, but it proved too powerful for them. After only 7 months, a devastating plague forced them to return it, recognizing its destructive power. After many wanderings, the ark finally arrives in Jerusalem. Here, King Solomon built the first temple around it, placing it in the Holy of Holies, the most sacred and inaccessible place. But in 587 BC, its earthly story ends with the destruction of the temple by the Babylonians. From that moment on, the ark disappears without leaving a trace. So what happened to the ark? There are countless theories. Some believe it was hidden on Mount Nebo by the high priest Hilkiah and the prophet Jeremiah, where it will remain concealed until the return of God. Others think it was taken to Samaria as war booty, but when the city was destroyed by the Assyrians, it might have been stolen and taken to any corner of the Middle East. There is even a theory that it reached Rome, hidden in the Basilica of St. John Lateran. Finally, there is the Ethiopian legend. In the 14th century, the Kebra Nagas says that Menelik, son of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, took the ark from Jerusalem, bringing it to Ethiopia, where, according to local tradition, it is still kept today in a church where only a guardian monk is allowed to see it. Other versions simply claim that the ark was destroyed during one of the many times it was looted over the years. What we know for sure, if we exclude the possibility that it is kept in Ethiopia, is that at the moment there is no longer any trace of this extraordinary artifact. So, while it's true that we don't know what happened to it, it's also true that by analyzing the descriptions and events narrated in ancient texts, we have an excellent description not only of what it looked like, but also of all the
straordinari poteri. A questo punto ci accingiamo ad entrare nella parte più misteriosa di questo racconto, un racconto che narra di uno straordinario
instead
sorprendenti e devastanti. Come dice
previously, the ark, during stops in the desert for safety reasons, had to be kept at a proper distance from the rest of the people. But even the transport was anything but simple and safe. In fact, during a transfer, Uzzah, one of the FRA, he discovered that the chest containing the ark was about to fall from the cart that was carrying it, and with his hand he tried to prevent it from falling. But the moment he reached out his hand, he was instantly struck dead.
When they reached the threshing floor of Nakon, Uzzah stretched out his hand toward the ark of God and supported it because the oxen stumbled, but the Lord's anger was kindled against Uzzah. God struck him there for his recklessness, and he died beside the ark of God.
Anyone who came into contact with the ark and did not know how to handle it ended up dying. We saw earlier that the Philistines, who had managed to seize it, had to return it because they were struck by a strange disease, an illness that caused painful growths similar to tumors.
Then the hand of the Lord grew heavy upon the inhabitants of Ashdod and devastated them, striking Ashdod and its territory with boils. When the men of Ashdod saw what was happening, they said, "Let the ark of the God of Israel not remain with us, because his hand is too heavy upon us and upon our god Dagon."
King David himself, who had witnessed the devastating powers of the ark and the death of Uzzah, at first refused to keep the ark and left it for 3 months in the house of Obed-Edom of Gath. During this period, Yahweh blessed the house of Obed-Edom, confirming that the ark, if treated with due respect, brought blessings instead of calamity, and only then did David decide to bring it with him. At this point, it's fair to ask why all of this happened. Why did Uzzah die so suddenly, while he was trying to perform an instinctive act aimed at protecting the precious artifact? If we set aside theological explanations, this act, along with many others, seems incomprehensible, unless we consider the idea that the ark was something different and more complex than what we have imagined so far. The first unusual detail that we find in the testimonies of the Old Testament is the precise description that Yahweh gives to Moses of how to build the ark. Let's listen to it very carefully.
They shall make an ark of acacia wood. It shall be 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high. You shall overlay it with pure gold. Inside and out you shall overlay it, and you shall make a gold border around it. You shall cast 4 gold rings for it, and fasten them to its 4 feet, 2 rings on one side and 2 rings on the other side. You shall make poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold. You shall put the poles into the rings on the sides of the ark to carry the ark with them. The poles must remain in the rings of the ark. They shall not be removed from it. You shall put into the ark the testimony that I will give you. You shall make a cover of pure gold. It shall be 2.5 cubits long and 1.5 cubits wide. You shall make 2 cherubim of gold. You shall make them of hammered work at the 2 ends of the cover. Make 1 cherub at one end and 1 cherub at the other end. You shall make the cherubim of one piece with the cover at its 2 ends. The cherubim shall have their wings spread upward, shielding the cover with their wings. They shall face each other, with their faces turned toward the cover. You shall put the cover on the ark and place inside the ark the testimony that I will give you.
Yahweh gives very precise and detailed instructions. For example, he explains that the ark must be carried using 2 wooden poles inserted into the rings placed on the sides of the ark. These are not just ornamental instructions, but functional ones. For example, in the episode we mentioned where Uzzah lost his life, the men had not followed the instruction given by Yahweh for the transport. On that occasion, in fact, they had placed the ark on a cart instead of carrying it with wooden poles on their shoulders as instructed by Yahweh. This may seem like a minor detail, but as we will see later, if we attribute to the ark a different use than what is deduced from biblical exegesis, everything seems to have its own precise logic. A very interesting hypothesis is the one put forward by Rabbi Moshe Levin, according to which the ark would have been a sort of capacitor. According to this theory, the ark was therefore not just a sacred object, but also a technological device capable of accumulating and releasing energy.
Yeah.
The ark, with its inner and outer gold plating and the insulating wood between the 2 surfaces, could in fact behave like a capacitor, capable of accumulating an electric charge. Gold, being an excellent conductor, would have allowed the passage and storage of energy. The 2 cherubim placed on the lid of the ark, with their wings spread and facing the center, could have been the poles of the capacitor. Between their wings, it could be hypothesized that an electric arc was formed, a visible manifestation of the accumulated energy. To confirm this hypothesis, some biblical accounts actually speak of flashes, thunder, or manifestations of divine energy between the cherubim placed on the ark, which could be interpreted as electrical discharges. According to this theory, then, anyone who touched the ark without proper precautions risked receiving a lethal electric shock, similar to what happened with Uzzah. Another curious aspect is that the Levites, the priests in charge, were provided with special garments. Some speculate that these ritual garments had a protective purpose against electrostatic discharges.
You shall make sacred garments for your brother Aaron, for dignity and ornament, and you shall speak to all the craftsmen, to those whom I have filled with the spirit of wisdom, and they shall make Aaron's garments to consecrate him, so that he may serve me as a priest. These are the garments they shall make: a breastplate, an ephod, a robe, a woven tunic, a turban, and a sash. They shall make sacred garments for Aaron, your brother, and for his sons, so that they may serve me as priests.
At this point, one inevitably wonders if this energy condenser could also have been used as a weapon. We know, in fact, that during battles the Ark of the Covenant was brought to the front line, although it remains uncertain whether its purpose was purely to intimidate or if it played an active role in the clashes. Those who support the theory that the Ark could be used as a weapon often cite the episode of the fall of the walls of Jericho as an example. the city was besieged by the Israelites, and for several consecutive days the ark was carried around its walls, accompanied by the sound of trumpets. On the seventh day, after completing the final circuit, the army, once again led by the ark, shouted with all their might. At that moment, the walls of Jericho collapsed. Although there is no direct reference to the ark as a physical instrument of destruction, many see in this episode a sign of its power, suggesting that its involvement played a crucial role in the divine intervention.
The Lord said to Joshua, "See, I am giving Jericho into your hands, its king and its mighty warriors. All of you men of war will march around the city once. You will do this for 6 days. 7 priests will carry 7 ram's horn trumpets in front of the ark. On the 7th day, you will march around the city 7 times, and the priests will blow the trumpets. When they blow the ram's horn, and you hear the sound of the trumpet, all the people will give a great war cry. The walls of the city will collapse, and the people will go up, each straight ahead."
Another notable episode occurred when a group of 250 notables questioned the leadership of Moses over the people of Israel. Moses was not intimidated by this beginning of a revolt and decided that Yahweh would determine his fate. For this reason, he ordered the rebels to present themselves the next day in front of the tent of meeting, the place where he usually met with Yahweh. The next day, when the men gathered in front of the tent, they were suddenly swallowed up by a chasm that opened in the ground. Even though the ark is not directly mentioned in this episode, it's interesting to note that Moses ordered the men to present themselves exactly in the place where he usually met with Yahweh. And when Moses met with Yahweh, this happened in the presence of the ark. This last fact opens up an interesting hypothesis, possibly revealing a concrete use for the Ark of the Covenant. If you remember earlier, we directly quoted Yahweh's words, in which he gives Moses precise instructions on how to build the ark, along with another specific instruction.
"You shall put the cover on the ark and place inside the ark the testimony that I will give you. I will meet with you there. I will speak with you from above the cover, between the 2 cherubim placed on the ark of the testimony. I will tell you what you must command the Israelites."
This last statement seems rather curious. Yahweh seems to be telling Moses that the object he is ordering him to build will allow Moses to communicate directly with him. So the ark seems to be a tool through which Yahweh and Moses can enter into direct communication. But why would a divine being need a physical tool to communicate with Moses? Clearly we don't know this, but the words reported in the text don't seem to leave much doubt. To sum up, we can say that Yahweh gives very precise orders to Moses to create a tool that has specifications that must be followed very precisely, and that have little to do with a ceremonial object, but rather seem more like instructions for an object that must be able to perform specific actions. We also know that this object was very dangerous. Only men who were very familiar with its peculiarities could handle it. Handling it incorrectly led either to immediate death in some cases, or to a slow and painful death, as in the case of the Philistines. To this we must add that, according to what we learn from ancient writings, this instrument was useful for putting Moses in contact with Yahweh. The description of the material used and the way it was assembled also suggests that this instrument was able to accumulate energy like a powerful electric capacitor. We can therefore hypothesize that the Ark of the Covenant seems to have at least a dual function, that of a weapon and that of a communication device. Underlying these two functions seems to be a structure that basically makes it capable of storing energy that could be used to power a communication system or to strike people with powerful electric discharges. There are many and varied interpretations on this subject. Some argue that Yahweh could represent a member of an extremely advanced civilization, perhaps not from Earth. Others, on the other hand, hypothesize that the technology used by Moses was actually ancient knowledge inherited from ancient Egypt. According to some theorists, in fact, The Egyptians possessed advanced knowledge of electricity, and an example of this would be the bas-reliefs found in the Temple of Hathor at Dendera. These bas-reliefs, interpreted by some as depictions of technological devices, seem to show what we would today call Crookes tubes, a type of cone-shaped glass tube with 3 electrodes, 1 anode, and 2 cathodes. This would suggest the use of advanced technology that may have preceded modern discoveries, and would also answer another question. Why was the technology present in the Ark of the Covenant no longer used? Probably because the knowledge was lost, and once the machine was destroyed or damaged, no one was able to repair it anymore. So, who was Yahweh? A divine being who gave Moses a tool to use in his absence? Or did Moses and his close circle possess knowledge of advanced technology inherited from the ancient Egyptian priests, which they used to guide the people? It's clear that in all this, we're leaving out the biblical exegesis carried out by theologians, who see the Ark as a visible sign of the covenant between God and Israel. In fact, it was called the Ark of the Covenant because it contained the tablets of the law. The tablets symbolized God's commitment to protect Israel, and at the same time reminded the Israelites of their obligations toward God. In the very disappearance of the Ark, some theologians see a sign that Israel had broken the covenant with God, leading to the destruction of the temple and the Babylonian exile. Others, however, see in its disappearance a symbol of the future hope of restoration and the ultimate fulfillment of salvation in Christ. What we can say is that both for theologians and for those who approach the study of these ancient texts with a secular perspective, the Ark of the Covenant is not considered a simple relic or votive object, but something much more complex and powerful. This is the reason why, over the years, historians and archaeologists and even kings and government officials have funded the search for the Ark of the Covenant. Some claim to have come very close to its discovery. Others even claim to know where it is. But that's another fascinating story that, if you wish, we will explore together. For now, we'll stop here. But as always, we ask you to let us know in the comments what you think about this prodigious and mysterious object. And if you enjoyed the video and want to support our work, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Until the next story.